And the way we tell stories, use data, and engage citizens is evolving. And Africa's next decade will be shaped by how well we adapt. And this week, Abuja hosts the 2025 Media and Development Conference, a 4-day gathering of journalists, policymakers, researchers, and civil society actors from across the continent. Under the theme, reimagining democracy, development, and data for the next decade, the conference promises conversations on transparency, technology, and accountability, all vital for the continent's growth.
Yes, indeed. Let me help you with that. That's reimagining democracy, development, and data for the next decade.
Thank you,
Nazina. So we get that right. You're welcome, Queen. So joining us to give insight ahead of the event is Ifeanyi Chukwudi, Program Manager at the Center for Journalism, Innovation, and Development. Chukwudi, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Chukwudi. I'll go with Ifeanyi from now on if you do not mind. Ifeanyi, yes. Thank you for joining us. So Ifeanyi, first off, give us an overview of the 2025 Media and Development Conference, its objectives, who's going to be there, and who is it meant for?
Thank you very much for having me. The Media and Development Conference, or CGID, is basically a space for conversations about critical development issues and the role that the media has to play in setting the agenda and shaping, the trajectory of solutions for these issues. For 2025, like we've said, the theme is reimagining democracy, data, and development for the next decade. And this comes at a very important time where we're seeing a wave of democratic backsliding across the region. We're seeing the growth of artificial intelligence and the various impact it can have on rights and democracy. We're also seeing donor cuts and funding cuts and the threats that it poses to independent media in the country. And so this year, we're looking at how we can respond to this as a country, respond to these issues as a region, and come up with solutions that would work. So we're going to have about 500 delegates in the room. We'd have policymakers, we'd have journalists, we'd have tech, people from the tech sector. We're going to have a broad range of stakeholders, and it's going to be, promises to be very interesting and impactful conversation.
Right. With your theme, you're talking democracy, data, AI, development. Those are broad themes. And of course, we've seen not once, not twice, different people come up with conversations on how to, develop different things in Nigeria. So what are the key sessions or panels that attendees should look out for, and why should they look out for this particular conference?
Interesting. So we have a lot of panels. It's a 4-day power-packed conference. We will start off with conversations around democracy. ECOWAS marked 50 years this year, and there've been a range of conversations about legitimacy, especially with the exit of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS. So we're going to be looking at how and where we go from here with regards to regional integration when members are leaving. We're going to have conversations around independent media and civic space resilience. A couple months ago, we launched our CGID Openness Index that tracks the state of press freedom on a subnational level in Nigeria. We're going to have ongoing conversations around that and what it means to say that some states are very closed and some states are open with regards to press freedom. Going on from there, we'll have conversations around corruption in the extractive sector. For the past couple of years, we've been working around investigating and constraining opportunities for corruption in the critical mineral sector. We're going to be looking at the flow of capital and how media and how stakeholders can, plug the gaps for corruption within that sector. We'll be talking about climate change and beyond COP30 and where we go from there as a continent. We're going to be talking about foreign influence and manipulation, information disorder, artificial intelligence as well. We have a whole day, focused on AI. And we're going to be looking at how AI is being developed and how it can be developed ethically, how AI should be governed, who owns our data, just to ensure that we're building systems that work for us, to ensure that African voices, African data, and African values are represented in the technology that is increasingly telling us how to think, increasingly telling us what to think and how to make decisions. On the fourth day, we'll be focused on health. A couple weeks ago, the ministry put out the red letter, basically, championing citizens to push for accountability within the PHC system. So we're going to be bringing stakeholders in the room to look at our healthcare system and how we can, address the challenges herein and provide some solutions. So we'll be having executive secretaries of PHCs across the states. We'll be having commissioners of health. We'll be having journalists and policymakers in the room, just to ensure that more than preaching to the choir, we have decision makers in the room, who can take up the solutions and get some action along the way.
Ifeanyi, very interesting that you should mention AI. We're very excited about AI here, but I'll save that question for Queen. For me, what I'd like to ask is about these stakeholders. You talked about journalists, you talked about policymakers, technology. There's so much that this conference packs in. And if you know conferences, they're all about presentation, participation. You get a badge and then it's done after 5 days. People go back home. But how does this conference intend to take care of the issues of collaboration with these different people that are coming through, these different stakeholders that are coming through for the conference? How do you take it beyond just presentation and into actual collaboration or dialogue between or within these stakeholders?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting question. And if we've worked in the space, we know that a lot of meetings hold every day and every week here. So we're moving beyond presentations. In fact, the conference is not structured in a lecture style presentation. So we're going to have panel sessions that will be moderated by experts, within the field who know how to facilitate such dialogue. It's going to be very, very interactive because the people who will be in the room are also experts within their rights. And when
But Ifeanyi, while I understand that, and I think that you have actually represented that in your previous submissions, I'm talking about after the conference. What happens after the conference, after all the presentations? Are there going to be dialogues, like real dialogues and collaboration within these stakeholders that are coming through for the conference?
Okay. Yes, the short answer is yes. So as a center, we are focused. These issues that we'll be talking about are not just issues that we think we want to talk about in this conference. They are issues that we are working on as a center. Over the past couple of years, 2 to 5 years, we've been working. We have active projects that are working along climate change. We have an active AI project. We have an active project in the extractive space. And we've been working with all of these stakeholders. All of these stakeholders are our partners. So there are various plans for collaboration. We'll be taking on all the outcomes from this conference into our core CGID programming, and we'll make sure that we follow through on the commitments that are being made in the room. How we're structuring the sessions is that we don't just want to rehash the challenges. We want to come out with solutions. We want to come out with commitments. The stakeholders who are in the position to act, who will be in the room, we will have them make commitments, say this is what we're going to do as an agency, and definitely we'll follow through with them as a center, and we'll work with our partners to ensure that we don't just leave it as talk, but we, do something right after the conference. So definitely, yes, there'll be collaboration going forward.
Well, I like the hope in your voice, but of course we've seen that, AI has fake voices, fake faces, a lot of things done with AI. I think one of the favorite ones is the cat and the lion and the things on social media, but let me not go there. It's so funny. But what are the safeguards that you've put in place? Because if everybody's coming, then people will come for the conference for a solution. So what are the safeguards that you've put in place for AI, for our democratic process and all?
So how we're working basically is through our programming, right? We're doing a lot of work working with stakeholders to look at artificial intelligence, how AI is being developed and deployed in Nigeria, and what the conditions are and how, what role we have to play. We've been training journalists on how to, leverage AI for journalism, understand how AI is impacting journalism and how we need to be telling stories about these emerging technologies. We've been working with CSOs, interrogating how AI should be governed, how, what policies or laws or whatever it is that is required to govern, and ensure that these emerging technologies flourish, So we are basically, our intervention is basically through our programs and projects, just to ensure that we're, playing our quota, in ensuring that AI we're not just at the receiving end, but we're actively contributing to shaping AI governance globally. And basically, that's it. But for misinformation, we definitely have no problems with misinformation for the conference. We have a very strong fact-checking team that will ensure that there are no deepfakes.
Deepfakes indeed. If I may, I ask you, please step away from being someone who's perhaps maybe embroiled in the organization of this conference for a second. I want to ask you a personal question about AI, journalism, and democracy. We've seen this in other climes where deepfakes, like you said, have been used untowardly for certain reasons. Now, here in Nigeria, if you're talking about policies, for instance, that have to be put in place to help control AI and its use, especially when it comes to journalism, what challenges do you see Nigeria having, noting how difficult it is to get policies underway in Nigeria? What challenges do you see when it comes to press, AI, and democracy?
So the challenges are a lot. We've talked about deepfakes, the potential for misinformation, the potential for inciting violence, the potential for impacting on elections and election integrity. So the challenges are a lot, but with governance, we also have to be careful so that we're not putting policies in place or laws in place that stifle innovation. There has to be a fair balance to it. And that's what our work with CSOs, is geared towards doing, to ensure that we're working with people who are building these technology solutions. We're working with people who understand how to govern or how to create frameworks that govern emerging technologies like this, and understanding our local context, so we are able to, put frameworks in place that enable AI to scale, but also ensure that we're mitigating against the risks and the potential harms that these technologies can come with. So basically, the challenges are a lot, but we are focused on, what role we have to play in ensuring that we, find a common ground in the middle, because we've seen in various times how some legislations, basically legislations that should govern or do some good have been weaponized, to criminalize investigative journalism, criminalize journalism, basically. So we want to avoid a repeat of that, to ensure that any form of policy, any form of governance is one that is coming from a place of understanding of the local context, and also forward-looking and future-looking, in the sense that you are able to govern, but you are able to give opportunity for innovation to thrive and scale.
Well, so of course we see that conferences always sound good, and there are a lot of promises and all that, but turning them into, when you finally get what you want, turning them into government policy can be a huge, like a huge leap. So let's talk funding. How are you going to get funding for this? We already see that different doctors, ASU strike and everything, everybody's talking about funding issues. So how do you tend to do that?
So this is a very important question that will be answered at the media and conference.
Yes,
and that's why we're here, and that's why I think that this conversation is critical. Because take, for example, the healthcare sector. Part of the conversations we're going to be having is, what is the cost of primary healthcare? What does it cost to deliver quality healthcare services to the people at the local level? And in light of the recent donor cuts, funding cuts for the media, funding cut for health, funding cut for almost every program that we need for sustainable development, how do we go on from here? So we're going to have government stakeholders in the room who are going to tell us what they can do, what government can do to mobilize resources for healthcare, because we have to take charge of our own development agenda. We have to take charge of our own development trajectory, but we know that government cannot do it alone. So we're also going to have private sector players in the room, so private sector will tell us, what can you do? We see private sector across the world who are committed to funding development issues within their countries. So we're going to have private sector partners in the room. We're going to have development partners in the room who can also tell us, what we can do, to move on from here. So funding is a very critical issue, but I know that if we look within ourselves, within our local philanthropy, within our government, government may have to, rejig their priorities, maybe set some priorities straight that are not currently straight, but if we bring our hands together, definitely that funding issue, we can find a path forward. But it's something to watch out for at MDC.
Ifeanyi Chukwudi, I think it's your confidence for me. So we're looking forward to the conference. And of course, we are going to have representatives there. Chemunda Beng will be representing us. I think she's taking a panel. As well as Tulu Adilaru Balogun. She will also be present at the conference, one of the days at the conference. But Ifeanyi, thank you very much for making it up on Breakfast Extra here to discuss what's coming and what to look out for. And well, we're excited. Almost as much as you are, in fact, more than you are, because we can see the excitement in your face. But thank you very much.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.